Alright, welcome back. Let's learn what happened to Rioichi.
Master Ninja and Master
Yes,
Chef.
Shira, apparently this guy invented sushi.
So yeah, folks, for the first time, you know those ancestors we've been hearing all this talk about? You finally get to meet them.
Especially because if time is erased, it means something happened to them. Sure, Yoichi is a chef, but he's still a thief. But something had to happen to him, because now the place is occupied by Shogun soldier forces. Which is not good. And his restaurant is even closed. Damn.
Things got worse when Bentley discovered that Rioichi was locked up in a new high-security jail, allegedly for serving bad sushi to the shogun. It all sounded like a pretty tough...
And we don't really know who's the responsible. The cool, one neat thing about this game is that we have the villains being introduced gradually, foreshadowed. We don't know who they might be, and then we get the big reveal. Anyways, Sly Cooper and the gang in Turning Japanese.
Turning Japanese as well at the bottom, because
how can you? Because apparently
Revolver Ocelot. It's a reference to something, I forgot which, I think it's a song.
Yeah.
But anyway,
no, of course, no, of course, they're going to officially request to become Japanese citizens.
But anyway, much like in the previous games, Thief.net returns for you to purchase upgrades. Your hideout also has stuff like a ping pong minigame, which I'll showcase, in the final part, and arcades, which are essentially a collection of extra minigames tied to the hacking skills. So I will not show those.
Like in every previous game, you get custom menu screens for each different level you're in as well.
And also you will have actually collectibles, which I will use this first part, Feudal Japan 1603 AD, to showcase what you can do on the war map and the stuff that you can get. One thing that the game does is immediately gives you basically the paraglider. It's not like it gives you for free, you still have to pay like 100 coins, but it's basically given you almost for free. So the game might as well just, prompted you with Sly already equipped. But here's a couple of tips. First of all, for the rejoice of everyone, the bootles are back actually. And this time are actually harder than ever before to be found. But again, challenging in a good way, if you ask me. Because they're mostly tied, similar to Sly 2, to special moves that you can unlock once you obtain all of them. Go on, Jova, sorry.
So, one other positive thing to say about this game. I'm happy to report that the time frames that they do choose for time travel are pretty nice and unique. What they do with them, that's up to you. And
there's also a glaring
omission.
There's also a glaring omission from these time specifics that we have. But I have to save it for the final part because it's also connected to the development struggle that we mentioned in the previous one. But yeah, like I mentioned, the bottles are back. But also there are some new collectibles. Also there are some particular areas that for now are kind of locked, and you will need some particular upgrades that you'll acquire later on in the story for 100% completion. Compared to the previous games, this one actually adds stuff to actually feel like an actual collectible, adventure. In the previous games, they were present, but the treasures were mostly just there for money fodder. You automatically sold it. In here, they actually gave them proper, item-like description, and you can actually see them in your hideout. So that is actually a nice touch. And they're really of all kind and, distributed a bit all over the area. For this one, the animal distribution for the anthropomorphic of the guards is pretty standard stuff. Yeah, the baboons, of course, the cranes, and the boars for the bigger targets.
Indeed.
There we go. Sly still has forgotten again the upgrade that allows him to stealthily take down the guards. So for the time being, you will only have to do it in a more loud way. Also, occasionally down the level you will see this canister that it's best if you do not open, otherwise you will actually take damage. Let me also talk about this. There is no actual difficulty setting. The Alvar is back like in the previous game, but it's more balanced. You can definitely tell a situation where you take more damage than from something else entirely. Originally, apparently, the Sanzor wanted to include a mode that replicated the Lucky Charm 1-2 hit point from the original game, but could not manage to implement it because it caused problems during testing. As much as it would have probably been a pain in the ass, I would kind of morbidly curious to see how it would have turned out.
Now, I will say this though, folks. For all the problems with this game, there is one big one, which granted, we are not even close to, relatively speaking. But be forewarned, there is one big major issue with the game's narrative that has actually led to some fans disowning this game as part of the series.
You know the term discontented sequel? This is one of the primary examples, and okay, as much as I do not do that, I can see why someone would do it, because some of the twists in the game tend to be very moronic. Again, this writer, I don't know what we did.
Let me put it like this. The idea is...
Let me explain quickly. The treasure works just like in the previous games. You have a timer, run the fuck back to your hideout, ignore the guard if necessary. It's more important that you actually get it. So essentially, they're kind of like time challenges. If you manage to do it, the treasure is yours for you to keep. You collect all of them and you get a trophy. Go on, Joe.
The ideas in this game range from head tilting to, oh my god, what the hell were you thinking? This was never gonna be a good idea. Like, this game does feel like one of those games that definitely does want to leave an impact, even if it has to completely ruin the lore of the series to do it. It may not be apparent now, but trust me, it does some pretty baffling things.
So basically, Java, what you're saying is Season 2 of Korra.
Yeah, kinda.
I'm gonna go more with Season 4 instead.
I mean, okay.
I never hit Season 4 more too, but Season 4 didn't do that much in terms of ruining the lore of Avatar.
Yeah, like
I respectfully disagree on that too, but...
I'm gonna agree with Paige with that. Honestly, I mean, look, there's a reason people do consider Book 4 one of the good seasons of Korra. I mean, yes, it does have some issues. Let us not forget the fact that the series literally ends with us taking on a giant Pacific Rim mech, but... Again, jumping the shark.
Hold on, I need to explain this. There you go. Once you get all the bootholes, get back to the safe, and like I mentioned in some of the previous game, you have this weird mini game where you have to use the left analog stick, the right analog stick, the left analog stick, and the 6-axis.
Okay.
This game loves 6-axis to a morbid degree, and as you can see from my controller, I'm literally panicking just now.
Like, okay, not gonna lie, we did not need the 6-axis controller for this game.
To be fair, I've seen worse cases. Again, Heavenly Sword. Let me also explain. The items that you get from the safes are actually perks that actually help you. In this case, this magnet helps you collect more coins, helping you with the upgrades. But for the time being, we just need to do reconnaissance photo, the usual style. Go on, Pedro.
Sony was still 2 generations away from completely figuring out the whole motion control.
It's not even that, Pedro. They at least bother to not making too intrusive for future games. This one loves it just a tad too much.
And that's why Bluepoint removed the 6-axis stuff from Uncharted 1 in their collection.
Good on them for that.
Because no one likes it.
Like, I mean, look, I do get that they mean well, but I feel like the 6-axis was just another thing that was not doing this game any favors. And mind you,
it's
even
I
at
can tell Java.
Yeah,
I can tell Java that the interesting thing is that Tales of Symphonia: Dawn of the New World has tacked on motion controls on the original.
Oh,
version.
look who is here! Hello.
Hello.
In some particular missions, for a cheeky Easter egg, Sandro decided to place Clockwork spying. But I can tell you already, he was not coming to play with the plot. We just wanted to, again, be cheeky.
Which begs the question, why is he even here?
Well, it's more to produce a darker tone in a sense, but yes, you're still freeing your ancestors and everything, but they will still be killed by him.
Here's the issue, though.
Because that's what the plot line, what the timeline demands.
As many people have pointed out, people would have rather the main villain of this be, well, Clockwork. You know, the guy who literally is the villain against the entire Sly family lineage across all time. Like, how much cooler would it have been to have fought him across time as opposed to the actual villain of this game?
We'll get to him later too.
Oh yeah, that's the thing, Joe. But
Something
Tales of
inside looks
Symphonia Dawn of a New World did have tacked on motion
How will I
controls
explain this to
that
Carmelita?
added nothing. It
Time
was just
travel?
a nuisance. But surprisingly, Joe, the PS3 version did not try to convert those into successive stuff. Instead, in fact, it actually removed them completely.
Oh, they
So,
did not even implement the PlayStation Move.
nope, the PS3 version is entire. The only thing the PS3 version did too is remaster the visuals and add a Japanese audio option. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So
the,
we
best, it's the best version of the game.
Again, it's a bit of a shame that Banco has slowed down with the re-releases because it will only affect you.
Oh, don't even get me started.
It's not a topic for today because
Now that-
we're actually almost done with the photos. Basically, Bentley wants, as usual, some recon from the general environment and some materials that could be used later. Also, here's the one thing we didn't mention in the previous part. This game, for some reason, when you like die in a bonus speed or anything, instead of cutting to black and then putting you back, you get this like rewind effect. I mean, it's fine, but I just don't
It's like a
understand why.
VHS rewind.
Because it's Thieves in Time, Tio.
It's rewind time.
Now that being said, Tio, you mentioned about how the clue bottles are somewhat more challenging to find. Well, believe it or not, this is one of the things a lot of players did not like. Like, players preferred how stuff was done in, Sly 1, with the levels being more concise and packed tighter in, which made searching for the bottles somewhat challenging, yes, but it didn't feel needlessly
To
difficult.
be fair, this is just like in Sly 2, where they were in the hub world, and I don't remember people complaining for that.
Well, apparently the main complaints people had was that because the worlds were larger and more expansive, it sort of had the unintentional negative side effect that it made clue bottles needlessly harder to find, in the sense like, well, where
Okay.
they weren't necessarily more challenging, just that it felt more like they
Also,
were
hold
padding
on,
for
I
the
think I
bits.
figured it
Also,
out,
hold
Joe.
on, I'm about to showcase it after I dealt with the guard. Yeah, once again, someone in the development team really loves their cartoon animals a bit without gloves. And
that's
I really don't I don't like it. I really don't like that.
Wait. That doesn't even make sense, though. Well, maybe that's Carmelita's
That's
ancestor.
because we're about to make a photo. It's a geisha house.
Oh, goody. Yeah.
Although, truth be told, this particular, I don't know if we actually see it in this part. No, I think it's the next one. Anyway, here's our villain. El Jefe, the Cuban Tiger. And of course,
El
it's
Jefe.
basically a Che Guevara copy paste. This is actually one of the better villains of the game. Not to say that we're downhill from here, but it's actually one of the highlights. And Sony kind of knew this because we actually pushed a bit of marketing on him.
That's it, Tio. We kind of are. Well, okay, it's not all downhill from here, but a lot of the other villains are.
I argue the villain from Chapter 5 is just as fine as this one.
There's still, regardless of how you feel about the other bosses, there's the finale villain, which.
Well,
Yeah,
the finale
that-
villain is another thing entirely. I'm just saying that it's not like the quality degrades constantly.
Oh, well, yeah, sure. My point is like, well, I would argue
There we go.
overall it is kind of downhill when you factor in all the other bosses or whatnot, but we'll get to them later and be able to judge. Anyway, you were saying, Pedro, in regards to my point earlier?
Okay, keep in mind when I say this, Joe, I'm talking about specifically gameplay-wise, because most people agree that the writing in this game is a problem. But I think I figured it out, Jova. In the same way that you and I kind of stand up for Journey of Dreams, I think Teo's kind of in the Journey of Dreams place for this game as well as Lazar.
Sly, this place is locked down tighter than, well, tighter than something.
Your database security, Murray's pants.
Ew.
Yeah.
TMI is like.
There's a lot of lines like that in this
To
game.
be fair, that's kind of one. That's a line that Slime will kind of make. It's just still TMI.
The doorbell.
Very funny. No, you're going to
Yeah,
need to
these
Yeah.
much like in the third game, the disguises are back, and they're back with a vengeance. This time we need to collect each specific part, and then construct them, eventually construct them, so they can be used to bypass, enemies. In this case, particularly fooling the security guards. Each of these guys will also have innate ability specifically for this era. For this one, it will allow you actually to pass between, the guards. and will have a particular gameplay ability attached to it. But again,
It's,
all in due time.
sorry.
Go on, Pedro.
I can't speak for Jova, but like my enjoyment of the story of Knight's Journey of Dreams is mostly ironic because I say mostly because I do love the silent opening and ending FMVs that are done exactly in the style of the original game. I think there's a much better job of conveying everything. Because the writing, because the dialogue in that game I find it atrocious. But gameplay-wise, I will argue people give that game way too much crap, and Jove agrees. I'm guessing, Till, you're probably on a similar boat for this one, where you think people don't give the gameplay credit to this one?
I guess. To be honest, again, only recently I started discovering that this game is more disliked, in America and in other places, because I mostly use frame of reference people from my country normally. But also, on a side note, the only thing that I've seen of Journey of Dreams is a terrifying gif of knights turning into a car humping up and down.
It makes sense in context.
I can imagine
But
that.
okay. Yeah, I mean, to be fair to you, you're kind of going through what I was going through when I first figured out that Sonic 06 was hated. Mind you, I had not gotten to play the game yet. The only experience I'd had with Sonic 06, and this was like back when I was a kid, because as you guys know, I never got to get a PS3 or Xbox 360, so I sadly missed out on Sonic 06.
Sadly.
I
What a
was sad
shame.
about that at the time. I think
Yeah, at the time, Joe.
I think it was like 2011 when I figured out, holy crap, Sonic 06 has a bad reputation, because my own experience with it had been seeing it as one of those movie compilations that YouTubers like to do.
So you did not actually
Well-
see in reviews of
Well-
it.
Well, if it helps you, Jova, I only played it 2 years after its release, so technically I did still miss it because I only bought a PS3 specifically for Metal Gear Solid 4.
Okay.
Well, aren't you both lucky?
Okay, basically, you know how sometimes people shoot like a game playthrough as a movie, as in, they'll basically shoot stuff with gameplay footage and the cutscenes, maybe edit them around so that it's given in chronological order, the events that there are multiple different gameplays and whatnot.
Yeah.
That was my first experience with Sonic 06, so technically, I got it in the most coherent way possible. And whoever was playing it must have had a lot of luck, because it was not a playthrough that showcased glitches or anything. So I wouldn't have been able to
it's like you
tell
said,
that the
Jova.
game was that awful.
Well, it's like you yourself said in my playthrough, Jova. Like, if you're someone like me who knows how to play the game, someone can really make that game more easier than it actually is.
Oh, sure. My point is like, well, I was stunned when I figured out in 2011, and this was also sort of because I was using the internet more, that Sonic 06 had a pretty crap reputation. And my first proper look at how bad a game it was with the very legendary PokeCap'n Let's Play of Sonic 06, where essentially this YouTuber named PokeCap'n plays Sonic 06 blind in a college room with his friends in one straight playthrough in one night.
For me, it was like this. For me, was back in 2007, I was planning on getting an Xbox 360 for Blue Dragon. You guys probably realized how that turned out by this point.
Remember, I got a PS3 for Sonic 06, the same.
That's a big show. Fortunately, I managed to play that game for myself before that, so I was able to. Okay, never mind. I don't need a 360 anymore.
With the summer armor, the guards essentially don't recognize you. Sly as a hater's gonna hate walk, and now we're able to actually enter the prison.
So, Shiroi, I'm curious.
Very good, Sly. The guards are totally not going to suspect you.
So,
Yes.
Shiroi, I'm curious. How was your first
Well, sure,
playthrough
or
of Sonic
don't
06?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
What was your experience with Sonic 06 the first time? Like, did you like it as a kid, or...?
Well, like you, leading up to the game's release, I was legit excited for the thing. Then I got to play it, and it was a slow descent, and yeah.
Speaking, it wasn't even the worst Sonic game released
By the
that day.
time I played it, I was already perfectly aware what I was getting myself into. So to me, it was just that was just as bad as people have been saying. Yeah.
To bring
Also,
it back,
more. Sorry, go on.
to bring it back to Sly...
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
To bring it back to Sly Cooper, I do get where you're coming from, Tio, and the shell shocking here and there. I mean, granted, to me, I guess I have the luxury that I kind of always knew that this game had not that good a reputation over in most places, so... But, okay. Let's try and see things from your perspective. Like, what do people on your side of the fence really love about this game? Like, and would you say that you guys like it even more than the previous games, or it's more just like...
Gameplay-wise, strictly, the plot still has, most people not liking how it basically stumbles and dies in the end. But gameplay-wise, they really enjoy what they did. That's pretty much it. Also, some interesting torture devices. Extreme tickling and... well, this is someone's fetish, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Moving on.
I'll just say it about this game. There's definitely a lot of fetish. Like, okay, you fuck.
Hold on, I'll mention what you say later. Here's Rioichi, and to be in cheeky with the career, he's voiced by Steve Blum. because Steve Blum voices a lot of anime character with the strict Japanese accent sometimes. Most of the voice actors for the ancestors are there as, casting gags.
And here we're to one of the things some people are not always that keen on with this game. Sly does not always respect his elders that well. Mind you, a lot of people feel that this clashes with how Sly pretty much paid them high respect throughout the original trilogy, yet in this one he will have
Never meet your heroes, Jova.
Yeah, in this point he will belittle or degrade them a bit, and
okay,
little to no reason in some ones.
For this one, not really. Sly is actually a huge fan of Rioichi himself, so for now we're gonna be fine. But yes, in some of the later chapters, Sly will not exactly have, an high view of his ancestors.
And
which is baffling. To be honest with you.
Like again, we literally had entire games centered around respecting them, and now he doesn't. It's one of my biggest problems with the game is how it screws with Sly as a character, which...
It really is weird because Sanzaru was the one that pitched this idea of a Sly 4 to Sony after working on the trilogy. So you can tell that the very least have a liking of Sly Cooper. So you think
like I said,
the developers would have realized, okay, this writer is screwing things up. Let's fire him and get somebody else.
Like I said, I get the idea that what we were going for was a Never Meet Your Heroes vibe, with Sly saying, "Oh, maybe these ancestors were cool mostly because of the techniques they passed on by generations, but still being thieves and all, they were probably even more smug assholes than I will ever be."
It's not just that. Okay. Like, if that were the only thing wrong with Sly's character, I'd maybe get it, but that's not the only thing. Like we mentioned, Sly seemed to really want to get out of the thieving game, yet now he's dragged in just because of an itch. Again, it would have been better if he got dragged in because, well, hey,
the time travel is just a coincidence that was happening.
But then there's also something people point out. How Sly does not seem broken up with the fact that, well, he and Carmelita are back to the old game, even though he had made it clear he wanted out of that. Like, not only that...
Well, like he said in the narration, he was kind of counting on that to happen, and I get the idea because he was kind of missing the good old days, even including being actually chased by Carmelita instead of settling down.
Yeah, I was about to get into that. No, but go ahead and finish, sorry.
And you have to remember that like I mentioned very extensively at the end of Sly 3, their relationship is entirely being the both ways on toxicity. So
the problem,
I would have expected this kind of
outcome. That's the problem.
I get the idea what one may coming from in characterization of Sly, but you have to remember the seeds were still planted at the end of 3, and back then barely anyone complained.
That's the problem, though, Tio. Like you mentioned, this game doesn't really address that, though.
No, but go on, Pedro.
Okay. Here's another issue as well. The lack of context. Why? That opening. Let's go back to what we saw in part 1. The opening feels very rushed to me. Like, it feels like we don't really get enough context. Like, it's just it feels like, okay, here we are again. Okay, and guess what? I'm gonna start thieving again. Like, there's no proper build-up for Sly's return to thieving. Like, it doesn't really set it up in a way that feels earned, I will argue.
Like,
Okay.
Like, put
realize
this into
that a lot of people are going
perspective. Effectively, this has ruined the relationship that he finally established with Carmelita.
Yeah.
It has ruined the new life he accrued and wanted.
And well, like I said,
here's the
Jova,
thing, Jova.
it's not really a great loss if you ask me.
But that's the thing, Jova. Even then, if the writers could actually make that a plot point and have that be a genuine problem of their relationship and actually address it, maybe it would have been fine. But they don't.
Yeah, that is actually also a good point.
Which is funny.
It's pretty much clear.
I'll continue after.
It's pretty much clear to me that Sanzor just wanted to have, a new Sly game, but they did not consider all the trappings that had strong parts of the continuity they were going to get attached to.
Allow me. Okay, and yes, I understand. I understand, and we've covered this on the playthrough itself anyway, on Doze's playthrough. We commented on the lie reveal trope and how it's used in Uncharted 4, but I will argue that Uncharted 4 had a very similar elements to this in its story, but here's a big difference between the way that was handled. Cutscene first.
Well, it's just to showcase the path towards the cage, and which will introduce also the main gimmick that the samurai armor actually gives to you. Oops.
Oops, indeed.
Yeah.
If it came from 2013, we would have consistent subtitles everywhere.
Also, not only that, that's a very rookie move for Sly to make. Like, I know he's not completely familiar with the tech, but... Yikes.
And there you go. Now deactivate this kind of that is possible, true. But there you go. What you may see in the presentation was the fact that the samurai armor protects you from flames and has a vibration shield that can be used to reflect projectiles similar to the Golden Fleece from God of War 2 and 3. Go on, Pedro.
Okay. Because the way it's done in Uncharted 4 is that we actually get we get to see Nate working his actual proper normal job. We get to see how boring it is for him. We actually get a proper context in how he feels after working for 2 years and how he, like Theo said, misses the good old days and stuff like that. And much like this game, I guess, is trying to do, it talks about how that is a problem for his relationship with Elena because he doesn't actually talk to her about this. Again, if this game did something like that, that would have been fine for them to have a problematic relationship if they actually explored that topic, but they don't.
I will say this also, there are some story plot points in this story that do make me wonder if they borderline hated the original trilogy. I know, it sounds...
I wouldn't go that far.
That's a bit of an early assumption to me.
Okay, Dwibs, you haven't seen the story in full? Like I said, there is one major plot point that is just an FU to stuff, like again.
Again, sadly, it's not for now.
Yeah.
For the time being, the important stuff is that Rioichi has been rescued and the two just need to get out. In case you're wondering from the color, Shirai, yes, Rioichi is particularly like that because, like some in the bios in the interview, it's mentioned that his parents, one of his parents, I think it was his mother, was instead a red panda. So it's a bit of race mixing. And yeah, at the end of each mission, now you get these sometimes different jingles, which again, Peter McCollum does a fantastic job with the soundtrack. Replicate that with the jazzy vibe. But not to say that he's not capable of different genres that you will see later on.
So ends James Bond, the Sly Who Loved Me.
Oh my god, it's almost a surprise we haven't gotten a James Bond story that involves time travel, isn't it?
Well, I was about instead. Well, if you want instead a James Bond-like game that has an anthropomorphic animal as a protagonist, Jova, check Spy Fox.
That's the thing, Jova. Like, if it happened in the '60s, I can definitely see that being a thing because that wasn't one Bond that was at its campiest.
It was also a time
I'm
where
arguing the '70s are the most campy.
Not just that. It was also a time where those kind of plot points were mostly used by pure sci-fi series, like say the Phantom Zone, the
Star Trek?
whatever. Other sci-fi series. I'm digressing too much.
Okay, I'll go with Dwebs. No, definitely '70s. But at the same, that's the thing, Jova. Like, considering. Oh, hold on. Okay.
Mhm.
Considering the reception to Spectre, Jova, and how this is somewhat not this is not as badass and serious as Skyfall and Casino Royale. I get the feeling at this point we're never gonna get that because people wouldn't really like it.
That's a story, unfortunately, for another time. For the time being, see you for the next part, where the gang now has to work with Rioichi in defeating El Jefe. See ya!
See ya.
Yeah.
Yeah.